All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Melody. I am so excited to have you on our show today. For those of you that aren't familiar with Melody Lyons and her work, I'm just going to start off by introducing her. Melody is a happy wife of 26 years, homeschooling mother of 8, and Catholic author, pursuing the restoration of a culture of life through natural health education and the proclamation of the gospel. Her book, The Sunshine Principle, which is a radically simple approach to natural Catholic healing, has been the recipient of praise across the Catholic world for its balanced yet passionate contribution to healing the broken hearts, minds, and bodies of God's people. Melody is a chronic illness survivor and thriver, medical freedom advocate, birth and bereavement doula, aromatherapist, and health and fitness instructor. She's been writing and speaking for over a decade about homeschooling, Christian womanhood, culture, and the spiritual life, and can currently be found at theessentialmother.com. Thank you so much, Melody, for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yay, good. I am too. I just have to say, as I was reading this beautiful book, this is Melody's Sunshine Principle. It is just such a wonderful conversation, really. You're so articulate at being able to say so much that's needed to be said, especially in this world of the natural healing, and really trying to seek to restore that health to our bodies that we so often lose in our toxic, frenzied world. So I just want to start by saying thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to start with a little quote from your book that I just feel like sums up so much. And then I want to use this as a jumping off point. So, towards the very beginning, Melody says Catholics can be inconsistent about healthcare unless we are asking God to grant us a miraculous healing, to bless the hands of the doctors performing surgery, or to give us the grace to suffer well. We tend to separate the practice of healthcare from the practical application of our faith. We like to talk about embracing the cross of our sickness, but we don't often talk about the idea that we are the primary caretakers of our bodies and that God designed the created world to support our lives, our health, and our healing. I think there's so much there, but I think it also really helps people to see a bit more about where you're going with this book, because it's such a needed needed conversation to be having right now. So I want to ask you, Melody, as you kind of mentioned this in the book, but what really brought you to the point of writing the Sunshine Principle?
Well, it was desperation. I mean, desperation was where I started my healing journey. So I guess that is where, that's really the root of the book. But writing the book itself, the impetus for that was really the need to be able to communicate what I had experienced to other people. Once I started to, I'm pretty active on social media and online and have been for years. And once I started to share where I had been, where I was going, parts of the healing work and what I was discovering, I was inundated with messages from people. And I'm sure you know this, like when you're in any sphere of healing, even just communicating your own, people are in their own places of desperation
Yeah.
and want to know, like, help, help. They want help. And so I was getting all these emails and messages saying, I'm a mom of 8 or whatever. A lot of people like me, but everybody in different places on that spectrum saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to begin. What did you do? Please tell me, help me, give me some hope. And so it was from that seed where I said, I can't write the email, the book length email that I want to write to every person who's reaching out to me. Like, I don't have time for this in my vocation, but my heart is there, the desire is there. And so I wrote the book to be that response.
That's amazing. So you talk about the that you had Lyme disease
Yeah.
and lupus and other co-infections. So as somebody that spends a lot of time helping other people in their health journeys, how did you find out that you had, especially Lyme, because that can be so
Yeah.
difficult to diagnose?
Yeah. Lyme is so difficult. And it was the last thing that I expected. So it sort of came at actually more recently, within the last few years. But I'd been struggling with these health issues for really a couple of decades, and then it just kept escalating. So, really, what led me to the Lyme diagnosis was the symptoms that were like spiraling off of it. I had made so many changes. It was like a decade ago that I first started to make the changes, just experienced a radical transformation in healing. But there were some symptoms and manifestations of disease which kept coming back or were coming back in new ways. And finally, I just said, I need help. Like, I need somebody to speak into this space. I don't know what to do next. And fortunately, I had been familiar with the work of Dr. Mark Hyman. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
He founded the Institute for Functional Medicine, and he's got, he's not coming from our Catholic perspective. But his work with nutrition, with food, his own experience as a physician who went through healing, and then following his Institute for Functional Medicine, finally, I'm like, okay, I'm going to find somebody who's gone through this program, who knows what's going on. And actually, at a hospital in my area, they'd actually set up this center at the hospital. Wow. So took the average length of time at that time to be able to get an appointment was a year.
Wow.
So I got on the waiting list and eventually got in there. And she looked at the physician looked at all of my symptoms. We were in there, I think, for an hour and a half, which is almost unheard of, in a medical setting. Yeah. And she said, you know what? I think I want a couple of tests. One of them is Lyme, and the other one is mold toxicity.
Yeah.
And mycotoxins. And so we went down a road that I never thought we would be going down. And because, she recognized symptoms, combined it with like the really imperfect testing that's available for Lyme today.
Yeah.
And that started that journey. Sorry, I have like this tail. I don't know why I'm holding it up like fine. I think one of my kids' toys broke and there's like this little tiger tail, and I realized I'm waving in front of the camera. But
oh my gosh, I love it. I didn't know.
Life, right? Yeah,
it is so life. Yes, no, I love it. I love it. Embracing it all. Yeah. Well, that's so fascinating and amazing that you didn't have to travel great lengths either to find a doctor that specialized in that. Because that's not the norm either. Generally, people are flying across the country or, really lucky to find somebody that does things remotely. So that's incredible. I'm so glad that you found those answers and that support. And it's interesting too. So I primarily work with women with reproductive health issues, and the vast majority of them have infertility. And so I know the ways that Lyme and, toxic buildups and all of these things can impact fertility. So what a gift that you have your 8 babies, that you've had those 8 healthy pregnancies, even though your body sounds like has been dealing with these things for a very long time. Such a blessing.
I agree. It's incredible, especially as all this information is unfolded. I thought, wow, throughout all of this, and my pregnancies were really difficult. And a lot of times, like at different points in the pregnancy, we have different periods of immune strength or depression of the immune system, and so I would flare during pregnancies, and it just incredibly difficult. And so I was able to look back and say, wow, this is really informative. This really illuminates why I experienced things I did. It takes some pressure off of this feeling of inadequacy, of like, wow, I really just stink at this. And so that was helpful. But yes, my fertility really remained intact through all of that, even though pregnancies were rough. So
very difficult. Oh my gosh, wow. Such a gift. So as Christians navigating this natural healing world, it's so difficult to find resources oftentimes that we can really kind of dig deeper into some issues. So for example, I was wanting to, I work with my clients one-on-one about their mindset in regards to their healing journey. So I was reading some books to really help me go deeper into the impact of a positive mindset and how that can help to aid our healing journey, right? And as I was reading this book that several people had recommended to me specifically on mindset, he just got more and more into, these healing energies and chakras and a quantum field, right? Very new age. And I finally ended up just putting it down. But how do you recommend that we navigate these things when, the science at the beginning of this book that I was reading, the science was really good, right? There was a lot that I felt like I could glean from it. And I tried to just, work my way through it, prayerfully discerning. And then I got to a point where I thought, maybe I need to read this book with someone else. And then I got to the point where I thought, no, this book no longer should be purchased. And I need to put it down, right? So what tips have you found to be helpful when navigating, there's so much new aged, new people in the new age field that are like doing a lot of good science, but also they're intertwining their religion in with it all. How do you navigate that?
It's really difficult. I don't think there's one answer to that question because it's this like you're saying, it's this constant walk of discernment. We get in, we dip the toe in, we're like, okay, this is good, we know this is good science, and then we get a little bit further, and then there's that issue of trust. So and I think that's the one that we have to visit. So we if we're going to say, okay, I'm going to open this book and be receptive and vulnerable to the information that you're pouring into me, and then make health decisions or assist other people in making health decisions, I have to be somewhat confident that this person is a person who's trustworthy. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person, but like you're talking about chakras and things like that, and the quantum the quantum physics was, I can talk for a while about that because we have there's science, and there's certainly such a thing as quantum physics, but also that enmeshment where belief and science sort of become fuzzy. So you have the chakras, which stem from a spiritual belief system, and then you have people trying to reconcile chakra beliefs with science.
Right.
And sometimes it's true. You can take a maybe some like Chinese medicine or something like that actually does have physiological benefits if you separate it from the spiritual the spiritual beliefs. They've stumbled upon something that's beneficial, kind of like how some people might have used herbs a long time ago in a superstitious way, but those herbs can still be beneficial. But at what point are people just kind of using quantum theory or scientific language to sort of cover and justify a belief system which is spiritual? So those are some of the questions. If somebody's talking about chakras and believes in the energy systems and is in a spiritual way and is bringing third eye into it, and then how much is that woven into the book? So it's a constant walk of discernment, and really I think necessary to be steeped in the faith and in prayer, primarily. It is this temptation to become immersed in the work of healing, and then we also have to balance that by being steeped in this formation of our soul and our intellect in faith, in matters of faith. So it's completely normal and necessary to have these times of deeper immersion and study, but then we have to step out of it. And I would say daily and even hourly, to reset, reconnect with our roots in Christ and have that sense of what is of the faith and what isn't. And then, if we're really serious about growing in fidelity and intimacy with our Lord, then we should be doing just as much or more of that spiritual and intellectual growth than all of the other stuff. And I think we can develop that sensitivity to it. And we can recognize more so than we might have, this is just running contrary a little bit. This is a little bit unsettling to me. And then we also have the director of our souls, the Holy Spirit, right? We're not reading these things alone. But if we cut off that life, if we cut off that grace, if we cut off that information from the Spirit, who is with us, who is guiding us in our lives, then we're going to be reading in a very, very different way. So I guess that's not a very practical answer in some ways, but it goes to the heart of who we are, and it's recognizing that there is a spiritual reality, that we are informed by the Spirit, that we can have these checks, these little red flags, that isn't just up to us. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
that. I think that's so beautiful. And I think that's very practical, for sure, to have those moments of, remembering to, especially to pray before we read something that we know we're trying to really distinguish the wheat from the chaff. I love that. I think that's really, really helpful. So I'm gonna go there a little more then. I love
Yeah.
the like, calories are energy, right? Like we know that our mindset is producing a physiological response in our bodies, whether it's for good or ill. And you mentioned that in your book too. Like if we just have hope, how that can impact us, right? Like how that can allow us to move forward in a healing journey or not. So if we when we talk about this, the new age movement has really taken a lot of the energy talk. I feel like they've kind of taken it from us, if you will. They haven't, but that's how it feels oftentimes when we hear these words of energy. We tend to, especially as Catholics rooted in our faith, say, "Whoop, never mind, walking away from this," right? But yet we know these things are important and possible. So maybe helping us to understand a little more about the quantum field. Like you said, you could talk about that for a while. So let's talk about that for a little bit so we can help us to navigate these things as we come up with them in our reading or in a podcast or whatever.
Well, I don't understand anything about quantum theory or quantum physics, which is one of
Okay.
the reasons why I like to talk about this, because I think most people don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I'm going to give you, I guess I'll respond to this by way of example. And so I was in a popular Facebook moms group for crunchy moms. And it was a great group. You get a lot of people who are just so devout and fervent and knowledgeable and loving. But there was also this trend of certain homeopathic related practices, which I found really troubling. And
Yeah.
one of these is it's called the I think it's, see, now I'm not going to remember. I'm like, I'm going to give you an example, but I can't remember what it's called. A water remedy. Okay,
Okay.
so, and there was actually one woman. She was actually a moderator in the group. She's like, I'm going to do a live video, and I'm going to teach you all how to do this water remedy. And so, and she's deeply into the homeopathic studies. She's a
Yeah.
student of homeopathy. And so, the way that you do this, I mean, just very simple version. You write the name of the remedy on a piece of paper, and it has to be in Latin or it doesn't work. So you write it on a piece of paper, and then you fill up a glass of water. And, just like my water here, and then you set it down on the piece of paper with the remedy written in Latin. The energy from the written remedy goes into the water, and then you drink the water. And that's like, it's supposed to be like, if you don't have your homeopathic remedy there, your little pill, that this is like the quick way to do that. And I was just shocked. I was shocked that she was doing this, and shocked that people were like, "Oh, that's really cool, Yeah,
Mm.
awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us." And I'm over here like in the comments going, "That's magic. We can't do that." Like we're
Yeah.
not about we obviously the Lord created all of creation has energy in it,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
there is a difference between being able to manipulate and control that energy for our purposes, like picking up a stick and making it a magic wand. That's essentially what this water remedy is. But then she went on, so I was pretty much ignored there, and she went on to explain it, and she said, "But no, 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 this isn't magic, and I'll tell you why." And she brought out this big book. She had pictures of this book on quantum theory, and
Wow.
she's sharing all of this information, right? I couldn't understand any of it. Nobody
Yeah.
could understand any of it. I don't know. Like maybe she understood or thought she understood it, or maybe she didn't.
Mm.
The point is that somehow this practice of like, magical remedy making was made to seem incredibly scientific, because
Mm.
all of this wording, and everybody's just awed by it, like, wow,
Mm.
you're really smart, this is really smart language, I really want to be smart too. so
Mhm. Yeah.
so and I can't, here's the thing, I can't argue with it
Yeah.
because I don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
So when she's explaining it, nobody could argue with it, right? So this is where I said I could go on for a long time about this subject, because we do have this difficult space where the language of science is being overlaid onto spiritual practices. And that, I think, is where a lot of Catholics are getting confused.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, because, and with chakras too, that's happening. So you can change the
Yeah.
language of chakras with
Yeah.
that underlying belief in this, it's rooted in the spiritual belief.
Yes.
Same thing, like with Enneagram, people just, uh, and, I hope I don't offend anybody by saying this, but the roots are not scientific, they're belief. And so
Yeah.
then we accept this into our lives. We say, oh, well, I am number whatever. I don't even remember how the Enneagram works, but
Yeah.
I fall into this category, and I want to say, hey, wait a minute. How do you know? Like, who made it up?
Yeah.
By whose guidelines, whose science, whose belief system do
Yeah.
you believe this about yourself?
Mm.
And I think that's sort of permeating the wellness
Mhm.
world right now. Very
Yeah,
confusing.
for sure. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think so too. So just in that same vein then, so I know that you teach Soul Core Fitness. You're a certified instructor and you're finishing up your training with PHR Fitness, which is so
Yes.
exciting. So would
Yes.
you mind explaining for a minute, so talking about some of these things we want to stay away from, the practice of yoga and how Soul Core and PHR Fitness offer us alternatives to that?
Yeah, well, yoga is essentially bodily prayer, and it can't be separated from that. I mean, as long as it's called yoga, and being taught by yoga instructors, it's rooted in that the foundation of the yogic tradition.
Mm,
And there's lots of different, there's little offshoots. We have all these different kinds of yoga, and variations. And certainly in the modern world, we have people who emphasize the physical benefits of yoga. But there's no question, that it is what it is, as they say. If it's
yeah.
not yoga, it wouldn't be called yoga. And every yoga instructor is trained in the whole context,
Mm,
which is ultimately spiritual. So
mm,
with and that's an entirely, that's a separate discussion, and we can have more of it here. But just to talk about things like Soul Core or PH of Fitness, they're also bodily prayer. And that is where the body leads the soul to a place of focus on, in the spiritual life. With Soul Core and Pietra, that focuses Jesus Christ.
mm,
You're calming the mind, not emptying it like you would in yoga.
mm.
You're calming the mind and inviting the Lord in, and the calming is beneficial to the whole body. That's why people do yoga, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
um, the nervous system is brought
Mhm.
into balance, and so physiologically and mentally and spiritually beneficial, but oriented towards a person.
Mm,
Calming so that we can focus on the exercise and on Christ.
mm,
In yoga, that focus is to become united to a spiritual collective. I'm like
yeah.
using my own words, but
Yeah.
it basically this universal consciousness,
Yeah.
whereby the person is sort of minimized, eradicated, absorbed into the whole. And that's really the whole goal, is to become. And it's funny how we can find similarities in Catholic language. Like, we want to be surrendered to the Lord. We want to be little in
Mhm.
Him,
Mhm.
but we don't want to be eliminated.
Right.
And so with yoga and that Hindu spirituality, it's really actually seeking to be nothing,
Mm,
to be everything and nothing at the same time.
mm.
And in Christianity, we find that we are unique and we are
Yeah.
loved,
Mm,
and as unique persons, and that's how we're created. And so
yeah.
it's incredibly important to have that distinction.
Yeah.
So there might be similar movements. They're not the same. Soul Core and PHR are not the same
Yeah.
as yoga, but there's going to be similar movements, because frankly, there's hardly a human movement that isn't done in yoga.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like that was co-opted from the gift of movement from our Lord.
Yeah.
And we can look at those positions and we can say, aside from those things which are like contortions or which are specifically designed to be spiritual, or from like the physiologically dangerous things like certain kinds of breathing. Aside from that, there's a lot of just natural human movement there. And
Mhm.
so with Soulcore and Pietra, I think you find all of that. If it's
Yeah.
separated from yoga, Soulcore is prayer rooted in the rosary.
Okay.
So, and it was not meant to be a yoga alternative. Deanne and Colleen, founded Soulcore to be a way to pray with the rosary.
Mm.
And it just happens to be a really nice way to replace yoga.
Yeah.
PHR Fitness is, I think, for people who love yoga and love the flow style of exercise and, a more structured approach to strengthening and lengthening and strengthening. PHR might be more appealing
Mm.
because it does have a little bit more structure, but it's totally rooted in Catholic tradition, spirituality, prayer, and they're both incredibly. I just love. I can't say enough about them. They're different, but it's almost like it's like in the body of Christ. We can get together with other people and be so different, have different ministries, have different charisms, personalities, and just
Mm.
that root is the same. So when with my PHO community and Soulcore communities, I feel like it's just it's just united in the heart of Jesus Christ, which you're not
Beautiful.
going to find in yoga. And
Right.
I used to think that we could just do yoga light, just sort of, you know, do pieces, parts. And now I think, but why? I mean, we
Yeah.
could talk about the negative aspects, but
Mhm.
why not shoot for something better?
Yeah.
Why instead of being yoked? That's actually what yoga means. It means to be yoked.
Mm.
Why do we want to be yoked to this tradition which is not of Christ and is it's actually anti-Christ
Yeah.
when we could do something more, you
Yeah,
know?
that's beautiful. I love that. I don't know if you've ever heard physical therapists talk about the differences for different body types to do something like yoga versus Pilates. I'm curious within and I know PHR Fitness also has like several levels, like an easy to more advanced levels. Um, what would you say if somebody was told, like by a healthcare provider, to do something like yoga, like for the types of movements that would be beneficial for their body? Would you say that Pietra Fitness or Soulcore might fit that better in terms of like, a lot of that? I believe generally they're talking about more like opening the chest and the way that maybe we hold our stress and that kind of thing when they're talking about those differences.
Yeah, again, I think Pietra Fitness could be more accurately described as a yoga alternative.
Okay,
So if you've done yoga, you're going to find it more familiar.
gotcha.
Without some of the, well, without any yoga connection. Um, but also, and I think that's more reliably a yoga alternative. But in Soulcore, you're going to find that as well because
Okay.
the instructors, it's not as I would say it's not as structured, and you can do that workout in any way. There's even cardio Soulcore workouts, and you have some instructors who are definitely more inclined towards Pilates type work, or a gentler, just working on stretching and gentle movements. You have chair workouts. There's more. You can find both in both disciplines. But if you're like, I'm nervous, I want my physician says, I want you to do yoga specifically. And
Yeah.
here's the thing: they both have 2-week free trials.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I would really recommend is trying to find somebody in your area who leads, because one of the greatest blessings I've found with doing these workouts in person is that they're rooted in prayer. And
Yeah.
so in community, it's such an incredible blessing. Like, I can't describe the difference. I get so much benefit from doing the online workouts, but being in person, you're there, and just the intercessory prayer, it's something really special and unique.
Mhm.
So do that. Look on their websites to see if you have instructors in your area and what they're offering. And even if you're not like a people person and don't want to do that, just to get the feel, to really get the feel. And then they both have, I think, a week or 2-week free trial periods. And
Yeah.
just check it out, see what there is to offer, and yeah, play around a
Yeah,
little
I
bit.
love that. I love that. I find myself recommending that a lot to clients, so I absolutely love that. Um, So, throughout your health journey, and you mentioned this in the Sunshine Principle, you had said that you didn't know what you didn't know, and I think it's really common for those of us that have been through hard health issues and having to navigate that on our own. A lot of times without our doctors really helping us in that regard. We get through this difficult journey, and then we're passionate about helping others. As a natural health advocate, how do you think it's most helpful for us to be able to reach out to people that haven't gotten to that place yet of a lot of times we have to get to that point where we just break down, right? Where we like
Yeah.
enough's enough. But how do you think or how have you seen that's been helpful to help get people before they're at that point of breaking
Yeah.
down?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So I would say passion needs to be tempered with compassion.
Yeah.
So we look to the person first, the soul, and not to our desire.
Hmm.
So even if our desire is rightly ordered and rooted wholly in love, the first thing we want to do is just see them and love them where they're at. We didn't know what we didn't know because maybe we couldn't know. It takes time, it takes layers. People have different obstacles, maybe just preconceived ideas about what we're saying, maybe the words that we're saying triggers them. I also find that the experience that so many of us have of repeated failure
Mm.
hangs on us like an incredibly heavy weight. We might not think about it, especially when January 1st comes around and we're like, I'm going to do it again. I see this great program and I'm just going to dive in. But the reality is that we have like this little dude in the back of our head saying, you have never successfully accomplished this goal.
Mm.
And it's probably not going to happen. And so I think that compassion and really seeing the person is important. I also think that our fear of being off putting or not being understood or heard should not prevent us from saying the things that we have experienced and we've come to know and love. My initial steps toward healing a decade ago were precipitated by years of a good friend of mine like talking to me about nutrition,
Yeah.
and she'd be like, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should do an elimination diet. Maybe you should. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I remember my reaction. It wasn't that I was angry with her or that I didn't believe her. It simply was, I just had this block. I just didn't
Mm.
think, I thought I had done those things. I
Mm.
didn't really understand what she was talking about yet.
Mm.
When the time came and I was at a place of total desperation, lying on my bed, curled up, in a fetal position. My husband sitting next to me. I'm crying. I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I need to do something, but what doctor? I've seen all the specialists. There's nobody left to go
Mm.
back to. What on
Yeah.
earth am I going to do? I don't want to spend another dime, another minute wasted of my family's resources.
Mhm.
And all of the little words that she spoke to me and the information, it was still there. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I could go back to the allergist. I don't know. But what's she gonna do? Maybe she'd put me on an elimination diet. Oh wait. Oh wait. And at that point I said, you know what? I can do that on my own. And, and
Mhm.
and that was just me. Maybe somebody else. I couldn't have done it on my own, probably even 6 months earlier.
Mhm.
But I was ready and I dove right in and my life changed.
Mhm.
And so, and I contacted my friend. I've told her multiple times since, Lena, thank you. You know, like it was not wasted.
Yeah.
And and so be confident in that and don't be worried. Don't let pride get in the way. Don't beat people over the head with it. Share your testimony joyfully,
Yeah.
and truthfully. And it's okay if people don't want it.
Mm.
You're just there and they know that you're there, and the testimony of your life will be enough if you're the one who's going to be the one to help them with a breakthrough. So
Yeah, that's beautiful.
tenderness, prayer. So
Mm. I love that. I love that. Thank you. Okay, and then this is kind of a fun question I had. With the holidays upon us, what are some of your favorite ways? I feel like so often I like to celebrate with food, right? I think a lot of us do. And especially with Thanksgiving meal, Christmas, and then eating the way that you do on an anti-inflammatory diet and avoiding, some of these big things that are all over most holiday tables. What are some special treats that you like to have for yourself? I'd love if you have like a recipe that's like your go-to, but if you don't, like what are some of your ways to like still be able to treat yourself despite doing all that?
Oh yeah, I've on well, it's been 10 years of trying to navigate holidays.
Yeah.
The first thing, like even before recipes, is to really go in with a spirit of gratitude. And as you hit each point of frustration or isolation, or even, people like, why aren't you eating that? That's not normal. You have to be moderate. Just have one piece. People will do that and they just don't understand, and it's okay. And instead of entering into that isolation and frustration and even anger, like just
Mhm.
being able to laugh and being able to, look at the table and just say, Lord, thank you for the smell of donuts. Like, thank you for, the gift of being able to be with people.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the years I ate them and didn't know any better, and it's okay now. Thank you, and just keep going. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then thank you for um, the opportunity to love my body in your service.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to care for the people in my life because I have had healing. Thank you for self discipline. Thank you, whatever. Just keep
Yeah.
going and keep
Yeah.
going until you can manage the situation and just don't stop. And
Yeah.
even if you have to articulate it to other people, just say, I just want to share my gratitude for a minute. I just need to articulate this. It's really helpful. But as far as the recipes, I have, like, again, 10 years of collected things. I don't use recipes very often, and I try to keep splurges down, but I love the books of Danielle Walker. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with her at all.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I've been following her since before she became super super
Yes.
famous, but
Yes.
she's had such tremendous healing. She has wonderful cookbooks, and a lot of them, a lot of the recipes are a bit of a splurge. Sometimes the ingredients are expensive. I just pick, so that's another reason why it's infrequent.
Yeah.
um, just to say, wow, this is a moment I can just really appreciate. I can have gratitude for. For you foodies out there, this is an unexplored and very, very exciting world. Because when you're working with whole ingredients, beautiful ingredients, working with flours that are not just, I don't know, wheat flour, you start to get texture, you start to get flavor. It starts to come out in a way that's different, and you think, oh, this tastes weird, but then later on, you're like, wow, this is so delicious. This is so much better than what I've experienced before. I'm trying to think as I talk, which is not a good way to
That's
think, but
okay.
like, what do I really enjoy? I really enjoy smoothies.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy having a smoothie, making a smoothie, especially bananas. Frozen banana texture kind of makes it like ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then when everybody's having their ice cream and dessert, I feel like I can have the ice cream. So I'll stick them in the freezer and then warm them up a little bit later or let it sit out. And then I have like this ice cream textured, beautiful thing in front of me.
Yeah.
Um, it can even use like organic cocoa powder or whatever. Just, just nice things.
Yeah.
We do like to play around with almond flours and coconut flours for cookies or um, and cakes and things like that. But I find in general that I just really love the food that makes me feel well,
Yeah.
that nourishes my body. Um, or even, what are we doing for Thanksgiving? So I I do really enjoy a sweet potato casserole.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just bake the sweet potatoes. It's not a casserole; it's mashed sweet potatoes, but bacon. So you get the nitrate-free bacon. You get
Mm-hmm.
the good bacon. Fry it all up with onions. Mash up or bake your potatoes. Mash them all up with. You can use ghee, which is the clarified butter. Which, if you have dairy issues, that should solve it. Or grass-fed butter, and then just dump it all together and mix it up with some salt. And it's like these beautiful whole foods. We don't have to put marshmallows on top of the yams in order to have something that's amazing. And then I found that the introduction of the bacon, and we even dump like we're not careful about how much bacon grease goes in there. It tastes really good.
Yeah.
Um, and it feels like a splurge because it's extra. It's just delicious,
Yes.
delicious.
I
So
love that. I love that. It's so true. And I think too, as I help a lot of people navigate, going from the standard American diet to a lot more whole foods, it's really beautiful to see how their palates readjust and they find, oh, I actually don't even want those marshmallows on top. That actually looks gross.
yes,
To
yes.
like
Or like you
finding,
have that chemically flavor that,
yeah, yes,
like if I break down and have a piece of birthday cake or something,
yes,
even the gluten-free stuff, like
yes,
gluten-free products are not health food. They're just replacing, for your splurges. So if it says gluten-free, it doesn't mean you're going to lose weight or feel better necessarily. So, if I'll have like a piece of, and I try to, even splurge foods, I try to get closer to whole ingredients or healthy ingredients. So even if
yeah,
I'm making like a gluten-free box cake, I'm not going to use canola oil anymore. So it's
right,
always going to be olive oil or coconut oil or something.
yeah,
So just little changes, but
for
still,
sure.
I'll if I have a piece, um, and my diet, I just want to interrupt myself and say, not everybody has to go to the same level.
Yeah,
My body, I have been very, very, very sick in my life, and I have found that it does not take much to trigger that at all.
mm,
So I'm not saying everybody has to be super restrictive, like you can't eat your cake. I know
mhm,
what happens to my body,
yeah,
when I eat certain things. And so the freedom that I get from having just a different way of eating altogether is
mhm,
so it is worth it to me, and it's
yeah,
beautiful. It's not restrictive. I don't see it as restrictive anymore. But I was saying that if I do, I'm like, oh, I just really want to taste that. It
yeah,
tastes weird. It just tastes funny. Like it
yes,
leaves this weird, you get the weird, I don't know if it's additive flavors or what, but it's just totally
yeah,
different. And my
so
palate
true.
has completely changed.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And such a blessing, right?
Yeah.
If we all still walked around with that same standard American diet palette, we'd be very sad, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I didn't know. Like I had no idea. I just didn't know. And so
Yeah,
I'm not judgmental or critical of other people. I
yeah,
wish people the very best health, and I wish people understood how amazing, breaking out of that can be.
yeah.
Um, because the transition for me was so dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredibly dramatic. I took out when I did
Mm-hmm.
my elimination diet initially, I was in a place of desperation. So I
Yeah,
did my little bit of internet research. I said, I'm going to eliminate anything that could possibly cause inflammation, anything I can't pronounce, any additive. I don't
yeah,
know what's bothering me, but I'm going to get rid of it.
yeah.
And one of the funny things that happened was that I was not overweight, but within a week, I lost half a shoe size.
Wow.
The shoe size
Wow.
that I'd had for as long as I had adult sized feet. And
Wow.
I have never gone back to my pre shoe size. So I had this edema in my feet
Wow.
that I wasn't even aware of.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And that's how much inflammation was actually happening on my body. And again, I had no weight to lose really, but I dropped
Mm,
5 pounds and it was all inflammatory.
wow.
I had
Yeah.
restriction in a knee that I had surgery on when I was 16 years old, and I'd never been able to sit back on my heels.
Mm,
And 3 days after starting this elimination diet, I was kneeling on the floor changing my baby's diaper, and I sat back onto
no.
my heels. And when you haven't been able to do that for, what, like 20 years,
Yeah.
it's it, you can't quite communicate to other people
Mm,
how crazy that is. I
wow.
always thought there was just all the scar tissue built up. It was
Mm,
inflammation.
wow.
So anyway, for me, it was so dramatic, and that's motivating. People are like, "You have great willpower." Not really.
Yes.
I just really like what I like. I want what I want. I really want to feel well, and
Yeah.
that effort is like the effort of making the changes is hard. It's not easy. It's
Hmm.
challenging, but it's not harder for me than having to live in a state of disability.
Yes.
So
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Yes. So true. And oftentimes we have maybe less drastic reactions to things, but I think as we become more in tune with our body and how our body's communicating to us, we can hear a lot more of those things. And yeah, it's really powerful. That's
yeah,
amazing.
and not everybody's going to have those dramatic changes, but I do believe I that that everybody can have some benefit
Hmm. For
from
sure.
that
Yes.
transition, from relieving
Yeah.
the body from the stresses, from the toxic stuff we're putting into it. We're just going to be blessing our bodies all the way down to ourselves, you know.
Yes,
So
definitely. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. Oh, this has been so amazing talking with you today, Melody. I just want to ask if you have anything else you want to share with our viewers before we sign off.
I did mark a quote that I
Yeah,
just really love and that I want to share. So thank you for inviting me to do that because
of
I had the
course.
opportunity. So this quote is from a church document called Instruction on Prayers for Healing. And it's from
Mhm.
the CDF, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And that was back when Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger,
Mhm.
later known as Pope Benedict XVI, was there. So he wrote, recourse to prayer does not exclude, but rather encourages the use of effective natural means for preserving and restoring health, as well as leading the Church's sons and daughters to care for the sick, to assist them in body and spirit, and to seek to cure disease. The fathers of the Church considered it normal that believers would ask God not only for health of their soul, but also for that of their body. With regard to the goods of life, health, and physical integrity, St. Augustine writes, we need to pray that these are retained when we have them, and that they are increased when we do not have them.
Mhm.
And I love that because it's not just like, oh, just suffer and offer it up. It's like, well, no,
Yes.
the Lord really wants healing for us. And as the hands and feet of Christ, we seek to serve others and remain fit for that life of service.
Yes.
I have a lot to do in life. We all do. And a lot of people like to serve. And as the brothers and sisters of Christ, we must allow others to care for us as well. You know,
Mhm.
just remembering that we are the least of these,
Yeah.
and that it's okay, that it is His will that we be treated with dignity, with love, with great care, and that His healing gifts are for you and for me. So
Yes, yes. And one more thing I just wanted to say, to that quote reminded me of, was that in your book, The Sunshine Principle, you talk about those artificial crosses that we
yeah,
carry as a result of a lot of these things that we're talking about. If we, continue to eat the cake or whatever it is and feel terrible, what are we carrying that we shouldn't be carrying? And then what is it that the Lord truly wants for us and wants for us to carry? And I think that's so beautifully articulate and something that needs to be spoken about more. So I cannot thank you enough for writing this book, for listening to that call on your heart. You have such a gift of articulation, and there were so many things in here that I thought are so relevant to so many people and can be so helpful in their healing journey.
thank
So if you
you.
haven't had a chance, here's Melody's book one more time, The Sunshine Principle. I highly recommend it. And her blog at theessentialmother.com is just so lovely. I'm so thankful for you, Melody. You're such a beautiful soul, and you use your gifts so wonderfully. Thank you for blessing us all with them.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the gifts of your ministry and work, and for the opportunity to talk about these things, which are so important.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Melody. All right. Well, I'm going to go back and stop the recording earlier. I hate when I do that.